Welcome to American Stories with me, your host, Ahmad. This original HCAM series has been created to share with you the journeys of people who have come to America and, overcoming personal and professional challenges, have made a successful life for them and their families. And on this program, we will hear what they've experienced, how they've thrived, and what they've given back to the country and communities they live and work in. Joining me today is Dr. Ahmad Chaudhry. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for, I know you're visiting Hopkins from out of town, seeing your family. So thank you much for taking the time. I know this is a crucial time, but thank you very much anyway. So I was just going through achievements, and I mean, I can go on and on, but just to kick it off, for growing up in the rural parts of Pennsylvania, attending an Ivy League school, becoming a doctor, living in Manhattan, and running a successful business. There's a lot to chat about today. But before we dive into your success, let's talk a little bit about your childhood and how you came to the U.S. So just tell us about where were you born and a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. I was actually born in Pakistan, Lahore, Pakistan, which is a large urban city in Pakistan. And I lived my first 5 years of my life over there. And, memories are fading a little bit, but I remember childhood to be a very, fun and good time for me. I was very fortunate, both my parents and I have an elder brother. Mm-hmm. We lived together, and my dad was actually in the Army. Okay. And so we used to move around quite a bit. So within those first 5 years of my life, I think I had about 3 or 4 different moves over there.
Wow.
So it was definitely, it was a different time, as, same here in America, but certainly over there, it was a very peaceful time. It was a good time. And I only have good childhood memories from my time in Pakistan.
Can you share probably something that you vividly remember about your childhood in Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all about family. Yeah. I remember my grandparents' house. We used to, visit them very frequently. We used to actually live with them at certain points. I remember going to the smaller villages away from the big city, taking showers from a hand pump. Yep. There was some running water, but the house that we were in at that time, we used to pump the water out. Wow. And take showers that way. So it was a whole different world than what we live in today. And all the amenities that we kind of take for granted now certainly were not there, but that didn't detract from the happiness and the fulfillment that you had, living day-to-day life over there.
So you just mentioned that your dad was in the Army. Mm-hmm. How was it living, with a father was in the Army?
Yeah, no,
And was it more like a very disciplined life that you had?
Yeah, no, I think, all people from the Army, regardless of which country you might be from, they are very disciplined.
Right.
And so my father was very disciplined, very punctual, very on time, and that's something that stuck with him, up until today. Yep. And I think that definitely rubbed off on me and my brother as well. That, there was a certain way of doing things. There was a respect that was to be shown, right. Not just to family, but to elders in general. And there was a discipline that, in order to achieve anything, you had to stick with it. Yep. And certainly that was something that, was given to me by my father.
So you mentioned that you had a brother.
Yes.
You guys never thought of probably joining the forces, or?
We didn't, because at that time, things were, even though they were very happy for our family, they were more tumultuous and politically and other factors that were going on in the country. Right. And so that was the main reason that my parents decided that, it would be better for us, my brother and myself, to grow up in America rather than in Pakistan. Yeah. And that is where we, kind of decided to move here.
And that was actually my next question, that what made your parents decide to the U.S.? I mean, there's other countries, and him being an Army officer, it is really difficult for him to leave his motherland and move somewhere.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think both my parents loved Pakistan. They were born there. Their, roots were there. My father had some siblings who were here in America, as did my mother. And so that was kind of a natural link that we had to America. We would hear from them with letters and phone calls about how America was, how great it was. We would see, TV shows of America, things like, Chips used to be back then about, police officers in California. And so a combination of seeing the hope of America compared to, our community was undergoing some persecution, religious persecution, that it was a decision, I'm sure it was not an easy decision to make, to leave all your roots, everything that you'd built up for the first 30, 35 years of your life, and to leave it behind for your own children. And that was the real reason. There was just a much brighter future for the children in their eyes in America rather than in Pakistan.
And you bring up a very good point about, people move here for different reasons. I mean, it's job, it could be religion differences, but the freedom here that is offered is just, it is, I don't think any country around the world welcomes, immigrants like yourselves. So growing up, who was the most influential person while we were growing up?
I mean, I think, my father certainly, but my mother was, she was a housewife in Pakistan. But when we moved to America, she actually undertook an entire, lifestyle change. So she actually got her Montessori school teaching certificate, which took her, several years of traveling and going to classes and passing exams, and it was sheer hard work that led her to getting the certifications that she needed, while at the same time raising us in a whole different country. I mean, I still remember we used to walk miles to whether it was a grocery store or the bank, because we only had one car, and my dad was using that car for work. And so she was really the glue that kind of held our family and our extended family as well together, and kind of led us down the path of success later on. Because those initial year or twos are very difficult. And luckily we had some, aunts and uncles who were able to, help us out. And that was essential in the first few years of any immigrant's family, but in particular for us.
And what year was this?
This was in 1981.
81. Okay, 81. So typically, when immigrants move, it's either the big cities like California, New York, or Texas. Why did you choose Pennsylvania? And
no, that's a great question. So initially we moved to New Jersey because my father's sister, my aunt, was living there. And so we lived in their house for about a month or two. And then we moved to my mother's sister's house up in Rochester, New York. And so I started school over there for 1 year. And then we moved back to New Jersey and lived with our extended family for a couple of years. Moved then to our small little apartment in New York, outside of New York. And finally, my dad said, you know what? I don't like this crowded, small little, areas we're living in. Let's go to Pennsylvania. And there we were able to find something that was affordable, was a larger piece of land, and he loved the outdoors. And so that's what led us to Pennsylvania. Exactly.
And where about in Pennsylvania is this?
So we're in eastern Pennsylvania. It was Stroudsburg is the name of the country.
Of course,
the city, the Poconos. So it's about an hour and a half from New York City. But it really is, at that time, it was really kind of rural areas. There was lots of farmland, lots of woods. And so I grew up in Pennsylvania just in the outdoors, playing outdoors every single day with the neighbors, with the kids. It was a very joyful time over there.
Absolutely. So now you went to high school in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And where did you go to college initially?
So I went to, after high school, we went to, both my brother and I went to East Stroudsburg University, which was a local university. We were very fortunate that we both got full scholarships over there. And so it just kind of made sense financially at that time that you could go to university, not take on any debt, and take all the classes and get all the education that you really needed at that time. And we were actually living at home. So we were saving money that way as well. So it just kind of made sense.
So you graduated from university,
Yes.
a college in Pennsylvania, and then you decided that you wanted to move to Massachusetts.
Boston, yeah.
Yeah, and where did you go to school over here then?
So I went to Harvard.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to be, accepted by Harvard. And again, my brother had kind of paved the road a little bit. He went to dental school at NYU before me, and he had gotten a full scholarship to NYU, which was unheard of at the time.
Wow.
And so I was fortunate. I had applied to a bunch of schools, and luckily got accepted everywhere, and Harvard was one of them.
Wow.
And so, I was still kind of deciding whether I was going to come to Harvard or not. And I still remember my father saying, look, it's Harvard. You've got to go there. And so I think it was definitely the right decision, and I came up to Boston. Loved Boston, spent 4 years over here, and got my dental degree over here.
So you got your dental degree, and you are an MD too.
Yes. So
how does
after finishing dental school, you can either become a general dentist, or you can go into one of the specialties.
Okay.
And so the specialty that I decided to enter was oral and maxillofacial surgery.
Okay.
And so there, you actually enter into a 6-year residency program.
Right.
And part of that is getting your medical degree as well. So I went down to Stony Brook, SUNY Stony Brook.
Stony Brook, yep.
And got my medical degree, did a year of general surgery, did 3 years of oral and maxillofacial surgery, and then finally I was done with my schooling.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was it living in Boston?
Yeah, so Boston's great. I mean, especially being a student, it's such a young city. And it was my first time away from home. So it was my first time in dormitories. It was definitely a period of adjustment.
Right.
But the people there were amazing. And I still remember my parents driving up, from Pennsylvania, about a 6-hour drive, spending a few hours with me, having lunch, and then driving back home.
Wow.
So I still had that strong connection to family, regardless of where I was. And but I think Boston really kind of formed me as an adult.
Yep.
Which I kind of really realized later on.
Yeah. So you also mentioned when we met before that you spent a short time in New York.
Yes.
So how did you end up in New York after college, and what did you do there?
Yeah, so once I was done with my residency, that's when I started to practice in private practice, basically. And so I lived in Manhattan for almost 8-9 years and practiced oral and maxillofacial surgery over there. And Manhattan's obviously a whole different ball game.
Different world, yeah.
Compared to Boston, but that was a wonderful experience as well.
How would you compare both, just out of curiosity? How do you compare? Because you know how it is with Boston,
right,
New York.
Yeah, no, growing up in New Jersey and in New York, I've always been kind of partial to New York. But as I get older, I think I'm really drawn more to Boston because of the size, getting around the city, and the city has so much to offer. And New York it's New York, but it's a little bit too much for me now.
Yeah. So when you moved to New York, when you started your career, what were some of the challenges that you faced living and working in New York? Yeah,
I mean, New York is just it's just a go-getter type of place. You have people, you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you go out on the street and you're going to see, tons of people because everyone's up early. It's a very driven city. And I think that's one of the things that I liked about the city, that, you saw people exercising early in the morning, being disciplined, working until, the job was done. And I think, just being surrounded by those type of people, whether it's in the hospital or in the clinic or anywhere else, everyone's got the same mindset that they're trying to achieve something, greater than where they are right there. And I think that was one of the great things about being in Manhattan for those 8 years. You just saw people all around you doing a lot more than just what was expected of them.
So do you think that living in New York, working actually helped shape or excel your career in dentistry?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Harvard helped so much because you were surrounded by high achievers. And so the expectations were a lot more. That when you move out of Harvard and away from, the Boston area, that holds a certain amount of reputation with it. And I think in New York City it's the same thing. They say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And I think it's true, because if you can achieve a lot surrounded by high achievers, you're going to be able to make it wherever you go after that.
So I know you shared your career in New York, but I also learned that you had a little a love story in New York, that you ended up meeting your wife over there too.
Yes, so my wife was in finance. Okay. She worked for Bank of America, and so we met and we got married, in New York, and it was wonderful. And we now have 2 daughters, and we decided after we had our first daughter that New York might not be the best place to raise kids, and so that's what led us back to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. So that's how you moved back. And that was my next question. Then why did you decide to move to Pennsylvania? And did you go with the mindset that you still wanted to go and just work there, or did you have other aspirations of starting your own business?
So that's where, we certainly did not initially have the idea that we wanted to start our own business. But once we got there, I just felt like, I had learned a lot by practicing oral surgery, under other people.
Right.
That this would be a great time to open my own office. And so with the help of my wife, Marine, we basically started from scratch.
Wow.
And we opened up an office. You don't have any patients the first day you open up.
Come in,
but through the years, we were able to build that, practice up to where now we've got, 2 offices, 2 other oral surgeons working with us, about 25 employees in the practices, and it's thriving. Wow. And a lot of it was due to, her kind of business acumen about how to run a business, because as you know, doctors are kind of focused on their clinical work, that we really don't focus on the business aspect. But she was really kind of the stalwart in kind of making sure that not only are you doing the right things clinically, but you're doing the right things business-wise to actually grow the business so that you can serve as many patients as possible.
So what do you think goes in a successful business? I mean, is it patients that look at your credentials? Or is it your practice itself, or is it just your experience that has really contributed towards the success?
Yeah, I think it's all of them. And I think when we started the practice, it was really, we wanted to give a world-class experience to patients on our local level. Right. And that starts with training your staff to think like that. That if you want to differentiate your office from other offices, you have to do something different. So from the first phone call that they, kind of get on with our staff, they're greeted differently. When they walk into the office, they're greeted differently. They're given a tour of our office. They're given a little, information about the surgeon, about our history. And we really want them to feel comfortable, because whenever you go to a doctor's office, especially an oral surgeon's office, you're not very comfortable. It's not a very comfortable environment.
Nerve-wracking, it is.
So we wanted to kind of just break that mold completely and give them a completely different experience.
Wow, amazing. So as an immigrant, right, I want to shift gears a little bit. As an immigrant, it is, why do you think, and I ask all my guests the same question, why do you think, there's 2 parts, why do you think it is important to give back to the community, number 1?
Sure.
And I know that you have volunteered a lot, so please do share those experiences with us.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, America has given us so much. We came here with almost nothing, my family, and the opportunities that America gives to people is just, astounding. You just don't have that, or I haven't seen that in other parts of the world. And so when you are the recipient of these bounties and all these, excellent, opportunities, and you make it, then I feel like there's an obligation for you to help those that helped you.
Yep.
Maybe not directly those were the people, but it was people like them who helped you. And so I've had an opportunity to not only volunteer in my own community. We work with veterans in our office that need care but can't afford it.
Right.
And so we have them come in and we do free care for them. At one point we were doing major surgery. We used to, people who had cancer, all their teeth had been destroyed, and we wanted to give back, and we actually gave this almost a $50,000 surgery for free to one select person. And I remember the last one that we did was a cancer patient.
Wow.
Who wanted to, talk about his experience because he had overcome cancer, but he was too ashamed because of his teeth, and they were in such bad shape. And so we were able to give him a brand new smile,
Wow.
and he's doing fantastic now.
Amazing.
And then I had the opportunity to go to other countries as well. I went to Ghana, Africa, Guatemala, back to Pakistan, to again kind of give back from the training that I had received, and to do surgical care in those countries as well.
Wow, amazing. So typically over here in the U.S., and I'm sure you've probably seen a lot, so we have seen a lot of immigrants who moved here with almost with no education, and they have become very successful in their businesses, starting businesses. And then we have individuals or immigrants who they have a lot of education, but they're still struggling day to day. So why do you think it is important for education and in this kind of environment?
Yeah. So I think, from my childhood, as long as I can remember when we were in the United States, the expectation out of me and my brother was that you're going to college, that there's no alternative. I don't think I ever even had a conversation with my parents that, what if I don't go to college? So that was kind of almost a given. And I'm very appreciative of that. And so I think, when you get an education, it's not just the monetary, kind of success that you can have, but it's really an intellectual success, that you can have a conversation with someone about a topic that, that you've learned about.
Right.
And I think that in itself is a fulfillment that people can get out of education. And I think immigrants, they are driven to a certain extent because there's no fallback for them. Right? You move to a completely different country, 10,000 miles away. There's no going back. And so even in the kids, you kind of see that someone has given up their life to come to a whole different country just for you, that you better do something about that. And so I think that's something in the back of your mind. It's not a pressure per se, but it's certainly something which, kind of pervades your mentality every day. That I have to, succeed. And again, it's not just monetary success, but it's success in, volunteer work and giving back to your community, in being a part of your community. So I think all of those are things that are just kind of heightened awareness in an immigrant's, kind of mind.
Life story, So again, practically in a short term, you've achieved a lot. So where do you see yourself, I would say in the next probably 10 to 20 years?
No, I think giving back is the most important thing. So, kind of that's what I see for myself in the next, 5-10 years. Giving back to the community even more than I have before, and instilling those same values in my kids, my two daughters, Amaya and Noor. They teach me every day, but I want to instill at least the immigrant mentality, or the lessons that were taught to me by my parents back into them as well.
So just to round it up, given the successful in your life, how would you describe yourself in one word and why?
I think it comes down to, I would say, religious. Religious, not in the sense of just, kind of going through the motions, but I think, one thing that hasn't come up in an interview was that, this belief in God, and, belief in that there's some higher entity, and that you are responsible for all of your actions. And I think that is a very, very important aspect of my life, my family's life, and I hope my children's life as well.
Wow. So I had actually a lot of other questions to
Sure.
uncover, but given the time, unfortunately, I hope we can continue this some other time. But I really sincerely thank you. Thank you very much for spending time sharing your story with us. And I also want to thank all our viewers for watching the series. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Dr. Chaudhry's journey. And to learn more about our show, please visit our webpage. I would love to hear your comments and reactions on our show, and my contact information is on that page. Until next time, for American Stories with Amman, I wish you and your families safe travels. Happy Thanksgiving.